Hi, this is Mario, and in this video I would like to show you some stuff that I wanted to do for quite some time actually, which is to get an overview of what CUBA is capable of doing and trying to get through some requirements and just trying to implement them. It will take around about like 60 minutes or so. I wrote some stuff here that we might go through, and let's see how far we can get with that. So it is about order management. This is obviously the reason that I mostly use for this purpose. And so first we can start with entering some customer data. Then we have something like that we want to add addresses to customers, create orders, generate order IDs and stuff like that. And then besides the CRUD functionality, we have some programming going on. So for example, custom validations or the feature to generate documents and attach it to specific entities. And then we will take a look at the API, if possible, and the full text search. So this will not only cover the open source parts, but also the parts that are premium add-ons from CUBA Studio. Okay, so let's get started. I created an application here, an empty one, which where we go to the data model, and let's get the first requirement here, enter customer data. In order to do that, let's create our first entity, which is the customer, and what we have for attributes is something like a name, which should be there, and we have something like first name. Let's say it's not mandatory. Then we have something like birthday, and here we can say it's date. And let's say it's mandatory again. And with that, I would say it's okay for now. Studio says, yeah, the instance name is empty. The instance name is normally something like this toString method in Java, where you have like a visual representation of this entity instance. And I would say, yes, let's just define a pattern here. It suggests the name attribute, and I'm fine with that, so let's just go ahead. When we go into this thing, we also see like the source code that will get generated and the SQL scripts that will also get generated. When we do it like this, and first of all, we can say generate DB scripts, which will create the corresponding update scripts, and I can say save and close, and Studio says, yeah, I should really update my database now. This is what I will do. And when we start our application, then we will see that we don't see anything of interest, and the reason is that we didn't generate screens for now. So let's just do that. Go to the customer, right click, and there's a mechanism to generate UI screen. We can define, or we can choose from different templates here. In this case, I would like to create a browse screen, which is like a list of all entities, of all customers, and then an editor where I can enter data. Yeah, I'm just fine with these attributes for now. Let's just create them. And so the application is up and running. We are logged in as administrator, and now we have this customer's entry here in the main menu that we can actually take a look. It is so that I have a browse screen now for my customers, and when I hit create, I can see that I am able to enter data. Let's just do it like this, and I can just save this data. Once again, go back in here and edit the data. All right, so with that, we have our first requirement up and running. So then the next thing is that we want to add multiple addresses to customers. Okay, let's see how this goes. We go to the data model once again, create a new entity. This is called address. And let's say it has a street attribute, which is mandatory. Then it has a postcode. Yeah, let's do them all mandatory for now. And we have a city attribute. Okay, the name instance is a little bit more interesting in this case. Let's put all the attributes in here, city, postcode, and street, and we will just arrange them. And here we say it's, so the first part is the street, and then we have the postcode and the city. Okay. Now what we need to do is to go to the customers and say we have different addresses for this customer. So in this case, the attribute type is not data type anymore, but rather a composition, and it is the entity address, which you just created, and it is a one-to-many relationship. In this case, Studio says, yeah, let's just create an inverse attribute here, which is mapped by this is actually creating an attribute in the address table or in the address entity. Let's call it that. Do it mandatory, and I think with that we should be fine. Yeah, let's keep it like this. And with that, we have everything set up between the relationships between those two entities. So the next thing that we need to do in order to see this thing is first what we want to do is create a UI screen for the address. And in this case I will just create an editor because I'm not interested in a table of all addresses, but rather only a table of all addresses in the context of a customer. So let's just create the editor for now. Yeah, looks reasonable. And the next thing is that we need to create a view. View is a concept that you might look up of the docs or of a blog post that I created. It basically says what data should get fetched for what screen or for what circumstances. In this case, we want to define a fetch mechanism that not only the direct customer data, but also the address data will get loaded. And with that, what we now can do is, based on this entity, based on this view, create a new generic screen. And in this case, although we have already a customer screens like the browser and the editor, we will just recreate those and replace the other ones. It will warn us this is okay, we didn't do anything special here. And as you see, the addresses are also part of this screen now. So stop the application server, run it, then Studio will say, yeah, you should really update the database. I will just go ahead and do that, and afterwards the application should be running, and we should see the new screen of the customers and the associated addresses. So let's take a look. We always can go directly into the order management IntelliJ project here. Let's just open the address Java class. Here we see all. Oh, I should set up my SDK. Yeah, that's fine. We see all the attributes that we just created, their corresponding JPA entities and the like. So for example here the reference to the JPA entity customer, so everything seems to be correct. And when we go to the application once again, we see that we now have customers and we can enter corresponding addresses. Since we already created the customers, the order, the address editor, sorry, we actually can go here and just create a new address. So this one is here. Like this, and then we have another one which is okay. With that we can just save it and go back to it and see all the related addresses. What bugs me a little bit is the normal generation, that we create another screen and the context is a little bit missing here. So we'll just change it in the following way. We can go to the customer edit screen, and there you see the XML representation of the screen definition, of the layout of the screen definition, and here we have this addresses table and the actions. So we can define an open type, and in this case I will use the dialog one, that will change the way the pop-up or the new window gets opened. In this case I want to have a dialog. This means that now when I create, the address is open as a dialog. One thing that is not very pleasant is this white space here, so let's just erase that for now as well. When we go to the address editor, we have information regarding the dialog mode. You can configure certain stuff, how this screen should behave in case it is opened as a dialog. We just get rid of that completely for now, and this means that it will just expand the heights and the widths as needed. Okay, with that I think we have covered the second topic here. So then the next topic is the whole order line or line items, as they are also called, and the product management. So for now I think we can go ahead and just create a few entities here. Let's say a product has a name and a code, and yeah, the instance name is totally fine. And then we have a line item, and if I refer to this GitHub repository here, Mario David, CUBA order management, and it's actually like this. So we have a customer, we have an order, and we have multiple line items associated to that order, and the line item is also associated to a product. So therefore, when we create the line item, the first thing is that we can associate it to an order. In this case, the attribute type will, as the name supplies, is an association, and the type is will be the order, although I do not really have that, so let's go and reference the product first, right? So we will just change it to this and say it's a one-to-many, because a product can be associated from multiple line items, obviously. I will configure the lookup type here, and you will see it later what that means. I will also make it mandatory. Then the next thing is we can have a price, which is like a big decimal or something. And then additionally we can have a quantity. And this quantity is like an integer. Yeah, sounds reasonable. And with that, I think we can go for it. I will not create the instance name for now, but instead go ahead and create the actual order entity. And so the order entity, first of all, it has a reference to a customer where it belongs to. So this will be the association to customer, and a many to one. association. It might also make sense to have a lookup type here. And actually, we want this open action as well. You see later what is behind that. Then the next thing is the order date. And let's say it's mandatory. And then we have the delivery date. And let's make it mandatory as well for now. And what we also have is the line items. So this will be a composition, because a line item should not exist without an associative order. And we will reference the class here and say it's a one-to-many one. And Studio will say, okay, you can do that, but you should give me the mapped by attribute here, or the attribute where it actually tries to get the connection. And this will be created in the line item. Okay, with that, I think we've covered the most interesting stuff. Perhaps one additional thing is the order ID, and let's say it's a string, and we'll just don't do it mandatory for now. Okay, so the instance name is empty once again. Let's just take the order ID. And with that, I think we have covered the most of the stuff. So what we need to do to create proper UIs with correct data fetching is we create a view for this line item. In this case, we will say it's an order. It's a product that should also be loaded. And we can actually once again go in here and say the product is the name of the representation of this line item, which is fine. Then we will create a view for this order and say we want to include the line items as well. But in this case, we will not take the minimal view, but instead this line item view that we just created before. And we also are interested in this customer. Okay, so then we can generate our screens. This is for product. Let's make it like this. Next thing would be for the line item. And in this case, we only want to have an editor because we will only create line items in the context of an order, so we don't need a regular browse screen for this. Okay, and the last thing is to create a generic UI screen for this order entity, and in this case we will use the corresponding order view that we created before. So when you run this thing, it tries to update the database, you can actually take a look at the SQL files. So there's always this init scripts which contains all, and then there's these delta scripts which will only add for every step that I do in this Studio application. It will just change the same. For example, here it will create the indices for the line items and the constraints and stuff like that. Okay, when we once again go to our application and take a look, we are actually able to see that we now have a browse screen for orders. Okay, just some random or not so random products that we just created. Let's go to the order section. We created an order screen, and let's take a look. If we create one order, then we have the possibility to define which customer it is. We can just look it up here or search for it, or we can actually just, with this lookup mechanism here, go to the list of the customers and select one of those. So then we have this order ID and we have this order date and we have the delivery date, as you see. So it is yeah, I was just wondering why now the validation is gone, but when we create another one, it says, okay, you have to define a delivery date. This is all depending on this mandatory attribute that we configured. Okay, so additionally, we can not only create this base data for this order, but we can also create the line items. So let's see. Once again, we have this editor that we created for the line item, and we can configure which product to use, which price it is, and the quantity, and we can do that multiple times. So with that, we should be at the basis, we should be able to add all the data that is required. So one thing that is not so cool is the fact that we have to manually create our order ID. So first of all, I would like to change the translation here. So if we go to the order class and go to this localization button of this order ID attribute, then we can just change it and it should just be applied automatically. So in this case, we have this order ID, right? So the next thing is, once again, we want to change the dialog behavior. So that we actually see that in a little more detail. Then we remove this this heights and widths, and with that we should be, just like before, see the corresponding information. Okay, we were saying that manually creating this order ID is not a good idea. Therefore, let's just do the following. So when we go to Studio, we can, in this middleware section, create an entity listener, and this entity listener is just a Java class. Let's call it order ID creator, and we will do a before insert. This means that directly before this data gets into the database, we will actually want to execute some code. And let's do it for the order class. So we can just hop into the IDE and just inject here the unique numbers API. This is an existing API from CUBA that we can just use, and with that we can change, or we can set the order ID of the entity. So entity but set order ID, and now we'll do a trick like that and say unique numbers API get next number, and we have to define a domain. In this case, this will be something like order ID or something. And with that, once we restarted our application, we should be able to see that we have a running auto increment feature of our application. As you just saw, so this is just plain Spring, right? So add component. Then we have just the normal dependency injection mechanisms, and these are some kind of hook methods that are offered by CUBA. So application is started. Let's see, when we create a new order, it should get an ID automatically assigned, which is cool, but what is not so cool is the fact that we can just change it. So let's make that happen. Going to the order edit once again and say, within this field group we have this order ID, and we can just make it editable false. And with that, so let's just remove that one without the order ID. And when you create one, you can't change the order ID, you can't set the order ID, and when you go here, you can't change it either. So this should be fine then. Next thing is custom validations, or validations in general. So there are a lot of possibilities to make validation work. This is the corresponding Java class to this order edit XML that we saw before, and I will go with a fairly easy validation. You can use something like Java Bean validation, stuff like that. What I will do is there's some kind of a hook method. We can actually, it's like pre-commit or something. Yes, right. And you can return a Boolean, true or false, depending on if anything is okay or not okay, and this will actually either like allow or not allow that the data is actually committed to the database. Okay, what we can do here is to say if get item, and this is the as you see, it's the order. We can say, so just once again, the requirement was, was quite fast here. The requirement was the order date should be before the delivery date. This seems to make sense, and therefore we should just automatically check it. So this means that we can let's say if it's after the get item dot get delivery date, then there's something wrong, and we should do a show notification, and we should say we can actually give it a notification type, and we will say this is like let's do an error, and then we will return false in order to not save the data, and otherwise we will just return true. So it seems everything's okay then. If we go now here and create a one, and we say it's the delivery date is the 20th and the order date is the 28th, and say case, and then it just says, yeah, something is wrong here, you should check that. There are better ways to do validation, but I will not go into the details here. Okay, so then we have an interesting one. It is to see the order history. So what does it mean? What I would like to have is the possibility to see the changes that have been made by which person to a particular entity. To make that happen, there is a built-in feature in CUBA which is called entity log, and you can go here and say I want to set up a logging feature, or like an audit log feature, and you can define it on a entity basis. So in this case it's the order one, and I will just go for automatically, and all the attributes should get checked. And then we say apply changes, and the next time no, don't change, don't save, I'm sorry. The next time we create an order, in this case, once again here for myself, and I will do everything right, hopefully create a line item, and then nothing happens, which is okay, but let's see where the audit log actually worked. So if we take a look at this, and we have like the mechanism to actually search through the data that got changed, we can actually make it a little bit easier for the computer here to search, because we say what do we want to see. In this case, we want to see all the changes that have been applied to the order. You see it here, and you see what actually changed, the new value and the old value. You can also trigger it down to a particular instance. You can say like this, and you search, nothing's there, and the reason is that we created the order before we activated the entity log. So if we go to this one and search, we should actually see the exact date. Besides that, it's also possible to directly include that into a particular screen. I can show you a link to where I did that. So it's github.com. Let's see. So this is called policy versioning, and this is like policy edit. And what we have here is basically this versions, no, sorry, this changes tab here, and actually we can try to make it work in our own application. When we go to the XML file, we can have like a tab sheet. And let's just create this one here, and we will say the ID is data tab, and we will just place all our stuff in there. Yeah, let's make it like this. And besides that, we have to add another collection data source, and this is like the logging information, where it actually loads the information from which data it should take a look and display the data. In this case, this is the order data source. So let's see, perhaps this already works. Going in here to the order that has changes, we go to changes and we see nothing, and this is like a problem of my layout configuration. So we can go to the screen layout and actually change it. I could change it in the XML directly, but I will just show you another way. So first of all, let's make it a little bit more space, and then we say it should expand this one here, and let's see, perhaps this is already enough. Nope, it's not. Okay, so let's go with the XML and change it directly then. So first of all, we need to define an ID for the tab sheet, because it's normally always a good idea to have IDs for every element. Then we say in the layout we want to expand this tab sheet, and this data tab here should also expand something, and this is in this case this line item box, which is fine. We will just do 100% height, And the next thing is here that we should expand this split. Checking that once again. All right, now everything is expanded correctly, and we see the changes that happened to this particular instance. What we can also do is just give them a little bit more space here, so it looks a little bit nicer. All right. Yeah, and this is when we change something now, going back to the data, change the order date, and going back here once again, then we will see the changes that have been made. This is the create entity, and this is the modify entry, where we just say what is the new value. In this case, we can also configure the old value, so this way we would actually see very detailed what changed. The old value was 5th of March, and now it's 6th of March. Okay, so this means we have a running order history. So then we want to show all customers, all orders in the customer's context. This is something that we don't really have right now. So when we go in here, we only can see the address and stuff. So let's make that happen. So first of all, we go into this customers here and say it has an orders attribute, and we will make it a composition as well. It's a one-to-many association. The map by attribute is automatically found. Yeah, seems fine. Studio tries to automatically generate this group table for us, which is nice. So let's accept that. And in this case, we can actually go and use this order view. So with that, we should restart our server, I think. Once again, we can actually go into this customer edit screen here and give that a proper formatting. So we'll take tab sheet, create a tab, an ID of customer. Okay. No, let's make it the field group should be expanded, and this is where the field group goes. Then we have another tab, yours tab, and we will so just like that. And with that, when we copy over the group box here, we should be pretty straight. We can actually remove this one here, and we can actually change it once again. Let's do it like this. Okay, I think we are pretty close, besides the fact that we should expand the orders table here. Give it a proper height, and the same goes for that. Should we say expand this table? Okay, so let's have a look how this looks. We go to the customers page and take a look at a customer, and we configure a proper spacing and a proper margin. Then we are able to see this different information from this customer. So let's just do that here real quick. Okay, so this looks slightly better. Okay, and now we go a little bit into this feature set of the premium add-ons. And for that I have to stop my application, go to the project properties and activate the reports engine. Okay, dependencies are downloaded, we can just start it. It will try to update the database because there are some tables in this application components. In this particular case, this reports application component from Hormone, and therefore it should update the database, which is okay. And let's take a look. So what we can do here is, in general, generate an invoice for orders. The reports engine is very suited for that. So we can create a report here using a wizard. This seems to be like a good idea, and this will will guide us through the information. We will create a report for the order entity, and let's just take the docx1 here and say this is the invoice, order invoice. Okay, so the next thing is that it will ask us for information that we want to print in this report. So for example, let's take this one here, and we will also do the order ID and order date. This would be fine, but for a normal invoice, it is also a good idea to create information regarding the line items, so that it's actually possible to see which stuff was bought. Therefore, we can add another region. This is a tabulated one, and in this case, it is the line items. Okay. For the line items, we want to have the product name, and we want to have the price and the quantity. Okay, yeah, order invoice sounds good. We will just save that, and this application component will actually generate us a template file. It will generate not only the entry here in the database, but it will also generate as a Word template file that we can use. In this case, we can just download it. I will just open it up here. So this is the template that gets generated. We see here this information. These are the placeholders where the data gets pushed in, and we can just arrange it slightly so that it looks a little bit nicer. Let's do it like this. Perhaps we can configure, something like that. And then we will say name. And we'll say price. All right, so we can just save that once again and try to upload it. So let's just store that somewhere. Okay, we can save it. And now let's just run this report and we should see some output. So we can run that here via this report screen. We will use this. Well, first of all, let's take a look at which order actually has information. Yeah, this one here, and the first one not. So let's just pick a few here. So we can run this one again and select the corresponding order and run the report, and it will generate a docx file. In this case, it will replace the data, which is cool, but I choose the wrong report, the wrong order, sorry. So let's do that once again. See order ID 2, run the report, and now we should have all the information already there. So I think we can generate invoice for documents. I'm sorry, for orders. Then the next thing would be that we can something like attach documents to an order manually. Let's start with that. So this means, although CUBA has already an entity for that, which is called file descriptor, I will create my own one and just use a one-to-one mapping here. So I will say a document has a file attached, and this is this file descriptor thing. And let's just do a many-to-one selection here, and it has a name. Should be a string, mandatory, okay. So let's just keep it like that. The name is cool. One thing that I can also show you is that we can use enums, and we would use that for the document type, let's call it. And we will say this is like an invoice, and it's like something like that. Okay, and then we will create another attribute which is called type, and which is of type enum, and in fact it's a document type. So there you can a little bit more specify that. And now what we also want to do is to say that an order has not only line items anymore, but documents as well. So it is a composition. Just let's do it like that. And it's one-to-many, so we can attach multiple documents. We'll create an inverse attribute, the order one. Okay, sounds good. With that, we should have most of the stuff in there. Studio tries to help me a little bit with most of the heavy lifting. Yeah, I say okay. It will automatically put the documents here in this view, but I also want to create a view for it because I want to attach the file. And then we should go here, change the not from the line items, but rather from the documents, and change it to the document view. Once again, start the application, update the database. And after some waiting time, we should be able to see not very much because I didn't create an editor. Yeah, but let's have a look. We'll see. When we go to the orders, we now have the possibility to see that we have documents. Yeah, it's not very fancy anymore, but it's okay for now. But we can't create one because we didn't create a document editor. Just create that. We go to the document view, say I want to have an editor for that, create it, and restart the application. So we can actually take another look at the requirements that we have additionally. So first of all, we want to manually upload documents to an order, which should be done right now. Then we have something where we can automatically basically combine the two approaches we had before. I don't think that we will get to that. I think we should just take a look at the API part, and then we might figure that out next time. Where we actually would like run the report and save that as a document. But let's see, first of all, we can just upload document. And we will create a document here in this list. We can give it a name and just select one, I don't know, some kind of file here. Give it a type in case we wanna. And yeah, just have this feature available to us. This would be, yeah, obviously the manual way to upload these files and store it for later usage, but it would also be possible to just auto insert them. So as the last thing for now, I think we can actually go to the orders edit once again and split it a little bit more apart. So in this case, we will just remove the documents table from the first screen here and put it to another tab. Give it a proper height, the table, and do the expand thing we did previously. Then we have the margin true and the spacing true. And with that, we should have some kind of proper view of this order. So with that, I think we can go to the last remaining part, which we should tackle now, which is the API part. So when we search for CUBA Platform Swagger information, they have like a generic mechanisms described as a Swagger documentation on how to use this generic API, this generic REST API. And I already imported that into this Postman app here. And so there are already pre-configured example requests to, for example, get an authentication token, where we would send a post request to this URL, the authorization has to be basic auth with actually they have like quite a good documentation on that. You can actually look it up here. It says you can define it in your application properties, give it some kind of client and secret ID here. This is what I just used from the regular application. And then in the body we actually send our username and password. Yeah, send that, and the response is OAuth2 token that we can use. I'll just copy it over here, and then we can use it for example, get a list of entities. I already tried that out. We can once again use that. I have to choose bureau token for the authorization part, which will if we say preview request, we can actually see the HTTP header, and then we can just get some entities. In this example, this is the sec user, so I will get information about all users, but I can also just go to my order class and use this thing here, and it will just respond me with the different information, which order ID, yeah, just an array of orders. It's not so much that we see here. We might just change it in the way that we can define a view that we want to use. So this is exactly the view we choose to define before. So in this case, it's just the name of the order. It would be like that. And we can just paste that in here. And now we should see more information on this generic UI, on this generic REST API, where we, for example, see information about the customer and the documents. In this case, here are documents attached actually. So this is the generic REST API. So you have normal CRUD operations. You can put, get, post, delete, stuff like that. You can find by certain conditions. That is not only doable via the API, but also through this user interface here, which we didn't really cover up till now. So for example, in this order browser, you can search for certain stuff. You can say, I want to find all orders for a given customer. In this case, it's not really informative, but you can also have order ID, or you can even drill down and say I want to have like order like customer.name contains something like that. Obviously it all will just find it, but you can use that the same thing for the order ID. So let's do it like that. So we should just see the second one. So the filter mechanism is available in the UI, which is super comprehensive. And in the API, they added this feature as well, I think, to some degree. I'm not 100% sure. Yes, okay, and with that, I think we have covered quite a lot of stuff. What we did not really cover was information regarding the AAA. This is what I called it. It's basically authentication, authorization, and accounting, if I get it right. So yeah, we could do something like we have different users that should see different information. So it should see, yeah, actually let's just do that once again here, just to show it to you. It's quite easy. First of all, we can define a role. So for example, we can say this is like the sales role, and we, I don't know, for example, could just remove this report section completely and remove this administration one as well. We can define permissions on specific entities. So I could say for let's say addresses should not be visible by this sales role at all. And you can even drill down to something like attributes. So when we take a look at the customer, we could also say that this role is only read-only and only should be able to change the name or whatever. And let's even make it a little more even more advanced. Here we say the birthday should not be seen at all. So then we have such a role. Now we create a user for this role and attach the corresponding role to this person. And when we log in this as this user, we should see no more reports available, no more administration available. And if we go to the customers, we can't really see anything anymore. We can't really change anything. We can't change the first name. We only can change the other thing. And yeah, this is mainly it. And I think, yeah, since we defined that the addresses should not be available to this role, the user is not allowed to see that. So you can easily define what a specific user or a role that is associated to multiple users is able of doing. And nevertheless, we might get into more stuff in upcoming video on that topic, but in general, it's quite easy to just use. So I would like to take the last 5 minutes or so here just to recap on what we actually accomplished in this roundabout 1 hour. So we created an order management system, an imaginary order management system, let's call it, with basic information regarding the customers. You can add customers, edit customers, search for customers, and define different properties for those. Additionally, what you can do is for a given customer, you can define orders, create orders, and do the whole management of these orders. You can also do the basic CRUD operations on associated addresses that are associated with a given customer. Then we went through and built the domain model a little bit further, grew it a little bit more, created the orders, created the line items, created the products. And here we see just a not very polished user interface, which is capable of uploading files for a given order, which is also capable of defining different line items for an order, setting the associated product and stuff like that. And then, and as another thing, we took a look at the audit log feature here, where we basically saw changes in the data will reflect in entries in this UI. Then we took a look at the reports section, where we said that we can run invoice for this for a given order. In this case, just once again, I'll just select an order and just automatically create a Word document or a PDF document or whatever you would like, and just basically can go from there and work with the documents. After that, we saw that you can actually also upload these documents and attach it to a given order. And yeah, besides that, we did a little bit of programming, not that much, but a little bit. So although it seems like you don't have to code very much in CUBA, I think these features that I showed are not really representative of the day-to-day work that you do in this framework, because at the end of the day, what you want is not to create CRUD screens so that the business persons have to manually enter all this stuff, but also, and this is basically the main part, create some kind of automation in whatever way. And therefore it is, as we already saw, it is just a regular Java application. It uses Gradle. It runs totally fine with version controls. It takes a relational database and uses JPA. So from a Java perspective, nothing very special. And I think with that we have everything covered that we did in the last this last hour, and I hope I could bring you this platform a little bit so that you are capable of understanding what is doable, where is it a good fit, and I hope that I can continue doing these kinds of videos, going into more details, because I think that it's quite a good opportunity to talk about certain stuff and show certain stuff. Alright, so thanks for watching and have a nice day.